High school teachers, what's the one thing that you want your students to know that you'd never tell them in person? Story 1. That I lied to you when I said I was 40. I was actually only 21, and I was only a couple of years older than you. I've seen you at the club, and I've seen you partying. Furthermore, I've run into you in a public way more times than you realize. But half the time I run away. The other half the time you catch me before I can. Also, when I was at the mall, the guy you pointed to and asked me if he was my boyfriend was just a random Tinder date I just met. He was definitely not my boyfriend. Edit. Since I keep getting asked how I was able to pull off looking almost twice my age, here goes. First of all, I had older teachers and the administration backing up my story because they were afraid that if the student knew how young I was, they wouldn't respect me. Second of all, I had a very serious reserved attitude during the job. No smiling, very blunt, no nonsense. Only very rarely did I crack the occasional joke. Lastly, I did dress frumpier than I normally would in dark, formless colors, and sometimes I even gave myself a bit of dark circles under my eyes with black eyeshadow. Of course, some students still questioned it, but when you have all your authority figures telling you one thing, it's rather difficult to not believe it. Edit 2. I taught in Thailand, meaning the students weren't in close proximity to foreigners all too frequently, so they didn't have much perception of what a 40-year-old foreigner should look like. I also look very racially ambiguous. My racial ambiguity also helped me out here. White people age very differently than black people, who age differently than Asians, etc. That's very interesting, with so many people lying to look younger than they are. It's interesting to see someone who's more beneficial in lying to be older than they are. I wonder if they've had a teacher that was younger and they actually didn't respect them. And it's interesting that they used their racial ambiguity to their advantage. Story 2. I actually teach middle school rather than high school, but I'll play. I love them a whole bunch. I do actually tell them this. That's not the thing. But man, every single middle schooler is a jerkwad. Like, even the best ones. They're all jerkwads. You can't help it at that age. Part of the process of being a good middle school teacher is accepting the jerkwaddiness and figuring out ways to work with it. Don't worry, guys. Your peers and you will stop being jerkwads soon. Most of you anyway. Also, all the things you think your parents and teachers don't know about, we do. We've done it all. We just would prefer not to think about you doing it because you're much too young. Edit. Sure, you weren't a jerkwad when you were in middle school. You're the exception. Congratulations, you special person. You win the trophy. I've taught more than 700 kids in my career, but I didn't teach you, so I don't know. I love this. I helped my now teenage son survive middle school by reminding him every day that middle schoolers are all jerkwads, including him, and that it will all get better soon. He struggled so much in those 3 years, but now he's thriving in high school. Interesting observation. I guess we can't really help it, but it does seem true. We're all still growing up and figuring things out. Also, at that age, everyone thinks they're going to live forever. Plus, you don't know everything, so you think you know everything. Hopefully, more people grow out of that than not. Story 3. A few off the top of my head. Just because I like you as a person doesn't mean that I won't fail you. Being smart isn't a justification for being lazy, and I can't pass someone that never hands in work. I moved you away from your friends because they were taking you down with them. You have a real future in sports, but you need to pass my class to play them. Your friends were making you fail, and if you don't get to play volleyball, I don't know what kind of future you have in front of you. I wish that the positivity that you get in my class could follow you home. I've met your parents, and they are a nightmare. I do my best to encourage you here, but I know that some days that just might not be enough. I have never and will never find a student intimidating. That's why I laughed at you when you asked me if I knew who your father was. Yeah, he's the manager of a car dealership. That means nothing to nobody. I had a kid throw a desk at me, and while it scared me in the moment, it didn't make me fear him. One day, you'll meet someone who has real power, and I just wish that I could be there to see it. Does it seem to you like teachers have less and less authority as we get older? Does it seem like teachers get blamed more for problems when something arrives than the students? I guess since teachers don't get much respect, why should they have respect for a kid that's behaving badly? Leadership and authority is a mindset. Story 4. I taught after-school care/summer school for a year, and I want so badly to tell them that 1. Now is a great time to find out who they are and stop parroting what they hear other people say. 2. Stop trying so hard to make Jamie like you and be your friend, because even though you and Jamie have been friends since pre-K, people growing apart is normal, and Jamie is a manipulative minge muffin. 3. I kept Owen and other troublemakers close to me in class because giving them just a little positive attention was infinitely infinitely preferable to giving them all of my attention in a negative light. Plus, maybe they just needed someone to listen and give them one-on-one, which I'm happy to do. 4. It's useless saying it because it's not going to make a difference, but this week's crisis won't matter next year, or maybe even next week, and it certainly won't matter on your deathbed. Story 5. If you're going to eat in class, stop staring at me while you're doing it. You're getting yourself out. Edit. Thank you everyone for sharing your stories. I literally laughed my butt off a couple of times. I already answered this in a comment. The reason the students aren't allowed to eat is because those are the school rules. I have no say in the matter, and I won't jeopardize my job for it, especially because it's my first year working there, and my supervisor pops in once in a while. Secondly, I do allow water, no drinks allowed either, and I let them finish their meal outside before the second bell goes off. Sometimes they even offer me some, and if they're truly hungry, they know this, they can just ask me at the beginning of class to eat outside. I also don't punish them when I catch them. I just politely ask them to put it away and have a laugh. Telling them angrily will just tick them off. See? I'm not a complete monster. Story 6. To my freshmen. Yes, I always know when you didn't do my math because you stayed up late playing Fortnite. You added me as a friend on Epic, so I see that. Also, the amount of homework not done in lower grades when new battle passes come out is so coincidental. To a specific freshman, I support your desire to become a streamer, but editing videos should not keep you away from your homework for a whole week, and your friends always rat you out when you stay home or skip to make and edit those videos. To all high schoolers I teach, you're dumb, but I do love you guys. I'm not stupid, and while I know you cheat on your homework, I don't care, since it's only worth 10% of your grade, and you're foregoing the practice you can get before the test. To the 6th graders I teach math to, dear Lord, you make me cringe so hard I have to take ibuprofen some days. I have so much more, but my lunch break is almost over. There may have been a time where teachers didn't understand video games in kids' lives. These days, it's a different story, though. Teachers grew up playing video games too. We know how all that stuff works. Loot boxes and battle passes may not have existed when we were growing up, but they're not too hard a concept to grasp. Story 7. I hate the texts as much as you do, but everyone just shrugs when I suggest changing them up. I'm sorry they made us keep that awful book on the list. I genuinely offered to buy them all back from students so I could burn the waste of time that they are. I had an eccentric literature teacher in high school, Dr. Paddock, who was required to teach the Odyssey. He absolutely hated it. So much so, he taught us off of the Cliff Notes. He explained how he was teaching it to us under protest in his very thick Polish accent. Just another example. He organized the class into rows, then gave each person a rank. The first in the row was the captain, and so on. You got promoted or demoted for getting answers right, but also for completely arbitrary reasons. Story 8. I can definitely hear the horrible things you're saying. Yes, I see that you're on the other side of the room. I may be old to you, but I'm certainly not deaf. Also, that teenage boy is definitely going to buy you a Big Mac in exchange for oral spicy time. 100 out of 100 times. I need the story on that second one. This girl was telling a boy about how hungry she was and didn't have any money. They didn't think I could hear them, of course. She says, "I'll suck your sausage if you buy me a Big Mac." We're not exactly in the best area here. I pretended like I didn't hear it, of course. Story 9. I can smell you. Everyone can. Please, for the love of God, use deodorant. Edit. Thanks for the gold and silver. To the people asking why I wouldn't say this to a student, the answer is twofold. 1, puberty is a smelly ordeal, and a lot of the kids can't help it. 2, because God forbid it's not their fault, infection, a cultural thing, or improper washing of clothes, you don't want to alienate that student forever. I run a retail store, and it's a pretty small shop, and is on the pathway home for a lot of kids. Those stinky bastards come in and stink up the whole shop so bad. I must remain professional, but I so badly want to tell them to leave and go wash their butt or put on some deodorant. A lot of these same complaints are levied in gaming conventions. The problem is, not everyone in gaming conventions is puberty age. Some people are much older and should know better. I think our reaction to some of those people is highly justified. It's probably a buildup as a result from dealing with puberty-ridden smelly kids. Story 10. that we have much better hearing than you assume. We just choose our battles as it pertains to inappropriate comments. And sometimes I pretend not to see that thing you did just because I too found it humorous. And speaking to you about it would only result in me cracking up. Edit. Well, this really blew up. I'm barely seeing people's reactions to it. I appreciate all the responses. A lot of great comments. And I can definitely share stories for those interested. It's so funny when they think they're getting away with something. But no, it's just near the end of the day and you're too tired to deal with it. Story 11. I don't know if there's an exact quote I'd use, but I wish I could let my students know how dumb they look sometimes, and how they need to relax and stop taking themselves so seriously. I also frequently find myself wishing I could rag on kids' clothes and hairstyles that they've obviously put way too much time and money into, but these thoughts only cross my mind when they're being jerkwads. That's the unprofessional, petty stuff, I'd say. I could think of something much more wise, but it's my lunch break and Friday, and my brain is fried from trying to keep these jerkwads together a week before finals. Story 12. Sort of late to this party, but I often want to tell my students to enjoy themselves more and worry less. And I guess I do tell them that pretty often, but what I really wish I could communicate is that it's perfectly natural to break the rules and be a little more reckless at their age. This would be pretty irresponsible of me to tell them, as kids need their teachers to be role models of good impulses, not bad impulses. But sometimes I want to. Kids today seem very frightened of the future and don't want to take chances, especially when it comes to having fun. I don't blame them based on the environments they're raised in. Also, if they have an A+ in my class, they can make a low F on the final and still wind up with an A-. That's very insightful of this teacher. I think he realizes that these kids are still growing up. They need to be allowed to make mistakes. You learn from mistakes. You grow from mistakes. Story 13. When you think you're being a genius by getting me to talk about random things at the beginning of class instead of teaching, I'm really allowing it to happen because I don't have enough plan to cover a full class. My favorite high school teacher, he taught history, confessed on the last day of my senior year that he always started class by talking about something completely random because he knew none of us were ready to pay attention right when class was supposed to start. Had no idea. It was a really good strategy that made the transition into the lesson a lot less jarring. Story 14. That it's just as weird for me as it is for you when we bump into each other in public. Edit. Instead of responding to all, I'll tell my story here. I went on vacation with my then girlfriend and bumped into a student 3 states over. We both kind of shook our heads no at each other and kept walking, silently agreeing to not address it. I saw this same student again 2 months later during the summer at a concert where they were underage drinking. We just shook our heads at one another again, keeping that same silent agreement. I saw the same student 4 more times during the summer entirely by accident. Story 15. If I didn't think you would abuse the situation, I would really enjoy being more human and casual around you. I think you're a fun person to be around. This one hits home. I was close with a couple teachers through high school and would even put in extra effort in those classes. But when the teacher would get to a comfortable level around us, it was easy to forget that they got there because of the effort I put in. And it isn't an excuse to stop trying because they like you. There is a fine line there. There are definitely teachers I really enjoyed. Some teachers are really very personable, but they are a teacher and you're a student. There still has to be that level of respect that you give them. They're entrusted with teaching you. If something happens, they're the first adult on the scene. Story 16. I knew you were cheating, so I gave you a test with the answers in a different order for the rest of the semester. You clearly weren't very bright to figure it out, and yes, I am that spiteful. It was easier than reporting the cheating. No way. Not high school, but in nursing school, one of my classmates purchased the test keys, made it to the 3rd trimester of the program, and come to find out, the professor for that part of our program makes his own exams. Dude dropped out after a week. Story 17. I don't care that you came to class stoned. Just stop interrupting class. And for Pete's sake, don't touch any power tools while you're stoned. I knew a guy that would come into first period stoned. He would always complete his work extremely fast and accurately too. Then he would just stare at his paper or whatever when he's done. Basically, a genius when stoned. Edit. I was not anybody's teacher. Story 18. One of the most valuable lessons I can teach you is to fake looking busy. If we're supposed to be working on an assignment or reading or whatever, and you see me coming your way, at the least have a piece of paper on your desk and a pen in your hand and some stuff on your paper, and then I won't bother you. If you have nothing going on and can't even be bothered to make it look like you're trying, I'm headed your way. This lesson will be invaluable with eventual bosses someday. A lot of people say that we don't get taught real-world skills in school. Well, it looks like this teacher does. I wonder what other lessons she could teach. There really ought to be a real-life skills class in every school. Story 19. I tell my kids that their stupid decision to stay out on the weekdays and not do any work will probably lead them to doing the same thing their parents do and living the same life. All my kids are incredibly low income. Also, their forced helplessness is not their fault, but I wish I could tell them to recognize it and do something about it. Lastly, please, for the love of God, do the freaking reading. It's not hard. I specifically edited it not to be hard. And no, you're not interesting enough to be a famous YouTube blogger. Go to college. Story 20. Yes, I do have favorite students. No, I won't tell you who they are because that would discourage you. But yes, they're probably who you imagine them to be. I tell my students that of course every teacher has favorites, but we don't have a quota. There's always room for more. Then I tell them the characteristics I really like in students, like authenticity and perseverance. Story 21. I'd imagine the hot teachers are very aware of the students' perception of them. Edit. Obligatory thank you to all those hot teachers who gave me the subject matter to get my most upvoted comment/post, as well as my first silver. Neat. One year teaching 10th grade, there was a girl very obviously crushing on me. I just made sure never to be alone with her. Edit. I am not saying I am or was hot. I'm an average-looking schmuck. When I was growing up, one of the big videos on MTV was Hot for Teacher by Van Halen. A student being attracted to a teacher is a tale as old as time. These days, that kind of subject matter is very, very sensitive. If I was a teacher, I'd just avoid seeing anybody outside of school as much as possible. That's drama I don't need in my life. Story 22. One of the most memorable things a teacher said to me, I'm really glad she did say it to my face. I really like you as a person, but I hate you as a student. My French teacher told me this when I was in high school, during this period where I was really depressed and on the verge of flunking out. Having her be so honest with me and pointing out that I was wasting my potential made me want to do better, and eventually I did. Story 23. Yes, I put you in a group with a kid you have a crush on intentionally. I'm stuck with you 180 days a year. I want to see some drama. Edit. I think this is my most upvoted comment. Glad my matchmaking could make some folks smile. Also, thanks for my first gold. Edit part 2. Silver too? No paparazzi, please. But seriously, thanks. Story 24. My gamer tag. I usually say there's a policy against it, but there isn't. I just don't want to play Overwatch or whatever with a bunch of relatively good kids who turn into total monsters when they play video games. If I tell the cool ones, it'll get around. Don't do it. It's like when a kid finds out a teacher's cell phone number somehow. Then the whole school calls. Teachers should have a budget for burner cell phones, or maybe a pay-as-you-go cell phone number that you use for business stuff. Use it as a decoy in case kids find out the number. That way you can just ditch it. Or heck, maybe even just give it out. You know it's going to change after a while. Story 25. If you're stupid enough to have filmed yourself doing something that can get you in trouble, especially legal trouble, for the love of God, don't post it online. Edit. I am not telling them this because plenty of them would see it as me approving of them misbehaving as long as they don't get caught. Story 26. The odds of you using any specific piece of knowledge you learn in high school is slim. The odds of you using some piece of knowledge from high school is near absolute, and you have no idea what it's going to be or when it will happen, so you may as well learn all of it. Story 27. Your sense of entitlement is most likely acquired from your upbringing, so parent-teacher conferences to discuss your grades aren't going to do squat when the parents just blame us, despite you putting in little to zero effort. Again, it goes back to what I was talking about teachers being blamed more than students these days. It used to be the kids were more questioned when there were poor grades. Now it seems like the teachers are being blamed, but it's kind of nice to know that the problem is focused on the kids where it should be in some places still. You want the reward? Put in the work. Story 28. I am no longer a teacher, but I remember several days that I felt lazy and wanted to give the class the day off. I never did because I knew the teacher's pet would rat me out. Sometimes even the teachers don't like the teacher's pet. Story 29. If you're jacking off in class, we can tell. This is a common occurrence? Well, it's either that or they're getting really into their phone. Story 30. That magic lettuce smell doesn't magically disappear between the parking lot and my classroom. How do I smell, bro? You're good. Me? You're good too. No, you are not good. I don't care how good the air quality is where you live. It's not gonna magically sweep away the odor of what you've been smoking when you walk into class. I think the same goes for alcoholic breath. Story 31. One day you're going to come across people who are not being paid to tolerate you, and all of a sudden, life is going to be considerably more difficult. Story 33. A lot of us probably drink, smoke, sleep around, etc. more than you do, and hearing you talking about it and trying to hide it as if it's something we wouldn't know about is richly ironic. Story 33. You're unique. You're not special. Set your goals high, but understand that if you change your goals to needs, you will have a lifetime of disappointment. Ooh, that one was really deep. I think I learned something from that one. That's some tough love right there. I gotta save that for later. Story 34. You're right. The administration is completely out of touch when it comes to technology. I also work better while listening to music on my phone. Story 35. I encourage my worst kids as much or more than my favorites because I don't want them back in my class next year. Story 36. If I know your name by the third day of a new school year, that means you're probably a jerkwad. Ooh, that one just hit hard. I guess some kids are just born to be infamous. I never thought about it that way. It's making me self-conscious. I'm actually thinking back to how long it took for teachers to know my name. Story 37. If your parents email a teacher and argue with them, the whole staff knows, at least at my school. Story 38. I love these posts because the comments are generally well formatted. Thanks, teachers. Story 39. You know what, Jono? You're a little runt. Gold, twice. Thanks, guys. Yep, they can't say anything. That doesn't mean you're not a little jerkwad. I think some of these kids know it too. It's going to be tough for them when they get out in the real world and come across someone who is not required to hold back. Story 40. Please stop juuling in the classrooms. That's what the bathrooms are for. Does anybody juul anymore? Or vape? Is that still a thing? Tell me that's not still a thing. Story 41. I'm a bus driver. Sit the hell down. You will die if I crash. Story 42. That my students are the reason why I'm second-guessing having my own kids. Story 43. I can see who you have a crush on in the classroom. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.